Tonight, we are blessed to have as a guest Debra Medina. She's a true conservative that has been active in the Republican Party in Texas for 17 years. She has been married to her husband for 26 years, and they have homeschooled and raised 2 children into responsible adults. Currently, she is the Wharton County Republican Party Chair and is also the Campaign for Liberty Texas State Coordinator. Debra is also the founder and CEO of Prudentia Incorporated, a medical consulting firm. Mrs. Medina has been a tireless advocate for private property rights, gun ownership, individual responsibility, and adherence to our Constitution. She has actively opposed big government, taxes, bailouts, mandatory vaccinations, the TTC, and abortion. And I found her because I monitor every keyword out there on the internet that has to do with parental rights. Debra Medina, welcome to Get Your Justice Live. How are you tonight?
Thank you, Larry. I'm glad to join you just fine.
Like I said in the introduction, I found you because I was looking for parental rights in governor's races, and so far you're the only governor candidate that has announced somewhere in their platform that they support parental rights, which is kind of surprising because parental rights seem to be the foundation of what would make our country alive and well. So what prompted you to use parental rights as one of your platform keys, and what sparked your interest with parental rights?
Gosh, Larry, as you indicated in the intro, my husband and I homeschooled both of our children. They are now 24 and 20 years of age, and so we have been, kind of charting our own course as parents and aware of some of the sideward glances that government and government-like officials cast your way when you decide to walk maybe in a way that they don't consider to be mainstream. And that probably has raised the level of awareness in our home about the things that occur. Unfortunately, here in Texas, there have been a number of things that have happened in the last couple of years that have heightened that awareness, I guess. And so it's certainly something, as you indicate, that we've got to pay attention to and be more vigilant about. So I'm delighted to make your acquaintance and to know y'all are out here doing the good work that you are.
The Homeschool Legal Defense Association is certainly a friend to our show. We've had some of the staff attorneys and also many of the supporters of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association associated with Get Your Justice Live. So I see the importance of a parent being able to choose and have that right to choose how they're going to direct the education and care and upbringing of their own children. And the fact that you homeschooled both your son and daughter is phenomenal news. And, this is something that is a success story that needs to be spread everywhere because, so many people, for whatever reason, they suddenly have an idea that homeschooling is a bad thing just because it's different than what they're used to. And, whenever we're dealing with something that's different, a lot of times bad legislation gets introduced that says, well, we're going to get rid of the things that we don't agree with. And they tend to tromp on the rights of the individual or the individual sovereignty. Now, in Texas, we saw in the news some time ago a mass taking of several children, hundreds of children all at once. And, I suspect that a parental rights amendment, such as the one that's been introduced by Congressman Pete Hoekstra and also some of the statewide initiatives that support parental rights, being passed, would help prevent those types of government actions in the future. Do you agree that the government needs to be restricted in that way?
Well, I certainly think that what happened in El Dorado here in Texas was a travesty. I'm not sure whether the legislation that we're looking at today would completely fix that. I think we have got some serious problems with regard to the overreaching arm of our government in many areas, and certainly intruding into the home is one of those places. I have to hope, I'm sure, as the authors do, that it would move us in that direction. But I don't know that any of these things that we have out there right now is a silver bullet. I think we've got legislation and laws on the books that we conveniently ignore when we decide as elected officials or law enforcement that someone is doing something. I think you used the word different. Unfortunately, many in our society deem that we ought to be able to change that behavior. And gosh, part of freedom is letting people be free to succeed and letting them be free to fail and letting them be free to be different. And I think we have to remind each other as free people, we have to take every opportunity to remind each other that not what I would choose maybe for my home or for my family, but what you choose for yours is certainly up to you. And I don't have any place in that decision. That's for you and your family to choose, and I'm going to respect that and try to protect that right. We've forgotten about that. We see a lot of elected officials, and I've been active in the Republican Party for a long time, as you pointed out, and it's one of the things that concerns me the most. We get into positions of power and authority, and then we try to legislate our morality onto the rest of the populace. That's not the way it ought to be in a free society.
I couldn't agree with you more. Now, in Texas, there's some articles out there claiming that Texas is the leading homeschool state in the country. Now, what prompted you to homeschool your children?
I had an aunt, interestingly enough, when my daughter was about 2 years old, who said to me, you really need to start thinking about this. And my husband and I were both born and raised in a small town in South Texas, and we were living there at the time, and I didn't know a soul that was homeschooling. And God works in wonderful and mysterious ways. And just as my daughter was turning 5, we moved to Wharton, Texas, and the church that we joined seemed to have an abundance of homeschool families in that church. And we began to learn a little bit more about what this thing, homeschooling, really was. And our daughter attended a church-based church-based kindergarten when she was 5, and during that year we learned what we thought we needed to know about homeschooling and how to go about that, and began homeschooling her in the first grade and homeschooled her all the way through, thinking initially that we would probably just homeschool for 3 or 4 years and really help kind of solidify the values and the ideas that we wanted into that little mind. And when she was in the 3rd or 4th grade, she wrote an essay arguing for continuing to homeschool and not going into the public school system. And so we homeschooled till high school, and then we kind of revisited the issue again as she prepared to enter high school. And she really wanted to enter, and I didn't. I thought academically she was doing much better at home than she would have done in the public school setting. And I convinced her to try 6 weeks of high school homeschool with videos, and we made some changes in what we were doing at home, and she absolutely loved it. And so we homeschooled her all the way through, and our son was never in any kind of a formal daycare or school setting. He's 4 years younger than his sister, and all he knew was homeschooling. So it was a wonderful experience for our family. Our children are just delightful young adults, and we were really blessed in our ability to do that. Pretty unusual family in that I have always worked full-time, and boy, everybody in the homeschool community 20 years ago when we did that said, you can't do it unless you've got at least one stay-at-home parent, and preferably the mother. You won't be able to successfully homeschool. And I had a dear friend who said, Deborah, if the Lord's laid that on your heart, he will make a way for that to happen, and he did. Certainly, I envy those families that are making the sacrifice to have a parent stay at home. But in our society today, that's very difficult. We've got tax policies that really make it difficult for families to survive on one income. And so we're cognizant of that, but I want to give a word of encouragement to those who really want to homeschool and find themselves in a financial situation that they think they can't have a parent stay at home. It can be done. It can be done successfully. And so I want to encourage those families that may be looking at that.